Dr. Eric Asare. Been living in the UK for a little bit. Did my, what's it called, like high school and then university education there. Worked a bit in industry for a while after my PhD and wanted to contribute my small quota to the Ghanaian development, so I decided to come back and join the materials department. The two main reasons that made me return back to KNUST specifically. One is while I was growing up in Kumasi, KNUST was the premium university at that point. Everybody wanted to be part of the school, and as most science students, it was like the place to be. Unfortunately, because I didn't finish my secondary school in Ghana, I couldn't be part of it. And then you hear stories of all the people you grew up with that came to the school and all those kind of stuff, from the people that went to Conti to Indies and whatnot. And this was my little way of reliving part of my childhood. Secondly, I'm one of those people that probably won't survive most places in Ghana apart from Kumasi anyway. So if I was going to return, probably Kumasi was going to be the thing, and KNUST just happens to be the home. Some of the issues that the country seems to be suffering from at the moment, and I think it's a global issue anyway, is waste management anyway. And especially when it comes to plastics, because most plastics end up being single-use plastics, and it's because of the cheaper nature of it, how we end up disposing of them become a big of an issue. So for instance, when I was a kid in Ghana, when you went to buy a Coke, you took the bottle back, right? So the bottle became valuable. Right? Without the bottle, you can't buy the Coke, or you have to put money down before you get that. Now, with the use of all these plastics, whether be it for sachet water or for even just bottled water, most people are happy to throw them away because the value to them is very, very less. And these things have, detrimental effects on both the environment and the resources. Most people do not know that these plastics are made from petrochemicals anyway. And how we get these petrochemicals is an issue on its own. And also how they degrade in the environment is also an issue. The simplest thing even would be like choking our gutters, for instance, anyway, which can lead to malaria and all this other stuff. But if you can actually utilize some of these wastes and do something a little bit better with them, then we can actually get something better out of it. So I'm kind of more interested in the polymer recycling, routes, and changing single-use plastics into something that probably have a bit of a long-term, currently, no. But the thing is, one of the issues, especially with Ghana, is Ghana is not really a manufacturing country anyway. We do more of an ad hoc thing, So most of the plastic industry that you see, they're not really interested in actually making something. So for instance, most of them will just buy the plastic and then make the bottles, but they're not really interested in innovation. So nobody's really interested in, how taking something from, let's say, the research aspect to the commercialization, right? So it makes life a little bit difficult than it should normally be. And then on top of that, usually companies are the ones that usually have a bit of money to sponsor things, but here we have, everybody seems to be stretched, so no company is willing to pay, or they don't even have the resources. They don't even have, let's say, testing houses. They don't have, these equipment, so it makes life a little bit difficult. But thanks to some of these international funding, some local funding within the university itself, and also just through network and stuff, you can actually end up being able to do one or two things anyway. But there's still a huge challenge, as I said, because of the way industries are in Ghana. People are not really looking to patent or to actually do innovative things. People just want to pick something that already exists and just make it happen. When I talk about waste management, what I actually mean is how do we, almost like if you're looking at the life cycle of something, right? So we're not just looking at how the product is made and when it's used, but how or what happens to the material after it's finished its service. So for instance, if you take sachet water, for instance, which is a common thing that most Ghanaians are involved with, right? I guess probably every household nowadays probably depends on the sachet water. When I was a kid, it was more of drinking water from the tap, but nowadays, I think barely anybody drinks water from the tap. So people buy this water. After they drink it, 90% of the time, it probably ends up on the floor or in a bin. Now, if it ends up in a bin, it's going to end up in a landfill because most people are not going to do much with it afterwards. At best, it gets recycled into another, single-use plastic, which might be a polythene bag when you buy your food that they put it in, the black bags that most people see anyway. If you go to Nigeria, they'll say nylon anyway. Again, that's a whole different ballgame. And nylon is not even the plastic that's used for that. I think the Ghanaian one is a bit closer anyway. Polyethylene, but we take it like that. But if these things end up being landfilled, because it takes so long for these things to decompose or degrade, it becomes a nuisance, right? And also, when it actually is in the ground, it's not really helping the soil anyway. And it's because of also the raw material that is used to make these plastics, it's really a waste. To actually have something that comes from petrochemicals, and we all know how terrible petrochemicals can be on the environment. So if you're actually going to get that and then just bury it after just one use, doesn't seem like a reasonable thing to do. But if you are not using them for single use and we are able to transform it at the end of the life. So for instance, let's assume, after drinking the water, we take these plastics, right? Like I think there's a guy in Accra, anyway, the capital, who's actually doing something like that, where you take those same plastics, you shred them or you break them down, and you can mix them with sand to actually make small bricks. Now, granted, some of the properties might be compromised, such as the compressive strength and all those kind of things, but at least if you use bricks to make housing, a house should at least last about 40, 50 years, hopefully. So at least that means to worry about that plastic, we have to wait another 50 years compared to if I spend 20 pesos or 40 pesos, whatever it is, get this plastic and just throw it away, ends up in the bin or ends up in the landfill, which is not much of use. But using it for buildings or even small pavements in houses makes more sense to me. The thing that I'm more interested in when it comes to these recycling stuff is more into how we improve the strength and more of a composite aspect anyway. So where we combine these materials with other things to improve their strength and those kind of stuff. So for instance, again, standards in Ghana is quite low. So if somebody was, for instance, to make a brick, nobody is there to tell you what the compressive strength is and what really goes into it and what's not, right? So dependent on, in quote, the mason that you get, they will determine how much cement goes into something, how much sand goes into it, how much gravel goes into it, right? But if you have a standard, then we can guarantee the strength or the integrity of every structure, which is one of the biggest issues anyway. So we can have buildings collapsing for no reason, or at times just because of simple engineering aspects anyway. So the idea is, can we use these stuff using the idea of composite, which just means we combine two materials to get the benefit of both, to ensure that load-bearing capacities can happen, because plastics are quite light. So we can then have lightweight structures that can actually bear loads. That's where I'm more interested in anyway. And how we plan on broadcasting some of these stuff is mainly through papers. But because the school itself also have ways of disseminating information through their website, they work with some radio stations and stuff like that. Hopefully we're able to use some of these when we have something very interesting to talk about. Well, from my own perspective, probably not much, but then the good thing about the current education system that is being proposed by the Minister of Education seems to be the right path, and where at least from a younger age people are being introduced to some of these sciences and stuff like that. Like when I was a kid, science was for the smarter kids in school. So it's like however good you were, you ended up in the science, and as you went along to the visual arts, it was how terrible you were in school. So at least with the promotion of science and those kind of stuff, it kind of seems like we're bringing out a bit more of these science to the forefront. Like the National Science and Maths quiz is a big deal to most people nowadays. And also there's small, institutions springing up in Ghana anyway. So for instance, I'm a member of GH Scientific, which actually goes to schools and try to do their bit in helping out. So they actually did sponsor an event that I did here. Granted, it wasn't for the lower people, where we call it Dumb It Down, where you actually took a science idea and you could use, I think, maybe 5 scientific terms, and you have to explain the whole thing. So you take away most of the technical terms so that it can be more accessible to people, because at times, as scientists, we can talk and it'll go over most people's heads, right? But if you're able to bring it to the level that an individual can assimilate, then it makes life a little bit easier. So it's like training these students to be able to explain things with less technical terms, but still conveying the message that it's supposed to convey. The main challenge as a researcher, because universities are supposed to be more interested in research, and the main challenge as a researcher is lack of equipment, which without that, it means that you can't really do much. It's like it's all nice and well having ideas, but if you can't test your ideas, then it becomes like a stumbling block anyway. And unfortunately, that's one of the biggest issues, where even the, in quotes, the most standard or the most basic thing you can find in certain labs, you start to lack it anyway. Or at times you have to outsource these things. And outsourcing means delays in timelines, and it's costing a lot of money. An example is like, if I wanted to, let's say, check what's like I want to check a surface, a fractured surface. If I break something, I want to see the surface. You use an instrument called scanning electron microscope. Now, most institutions will have one. Unfortunately, although there's one in the pipeline for the school, there's no one here anyway. And you have to outsource that. And it costs like about 1,000 Ghana anyway, just for one sample. Which means, and in science, we don't trust one sample. We do multiple samples, right? And if you take the average salary in Ghana, let's say 800 Ghana cedis. And if I'm just going to test one sample at 1,000, it becomes a stumbling block, which means I need more money into the research. And considering that most companies are not interested in research and innovation, even though they stand to benefit more, they're not willing to invest in that. People just want to take something that already exists and use it, which means they don't care about your research. So at the end of the day, you either end up doing, book stuff where it's like, okay, I think this will happen, but actually testing your theory becomes very, very challenging.
Okay, so we worked on biodegradable parts. So we're actually using banana fibers to produce a sanitary pad, because now it's expensive to buy conventional sanitary pads. Also, we are planning to do toe cups, and we are using waste plastics as well as palm kernel shell. With the sanitary pad, in Ghana, we have issues of poverty in rural areas. So most ladies in the rural community find it challenging to buy sanitary pad during their menstruation period. So we thought it would be advisable to come up with something that is better than the traditional way of using rags, because it also have health implications.
I came in like a year ago, and then I was able to go back and convince some of the Ghanaians in the diaspora to actually invest small amounts of money into what I'm trying to achieve, at least for my own small research. So people were able to contribute for us to get some small equipment, here and there to actually support some of these research. And we've been able to get at least some of our students applying to Russell Group universities in the UK. Because it's not always, even though you might lack some of the basic stuff, we're actually able to produce students that actually can compete on the international level. Right? So getting somebody into places like Oxford, Bristol, is actually quite an achievement, considering the kind of stuff we are working with.